Hey everyone, this is Heather and Jenny with Surviving Darkness, and today we are on episode 5. With episode 3, we had titled that one Clutches of Evil, and we talked about control. And our plan with episode 4 was to continue on with that topic, but like we had said, since that week was the 11-year anniversary of our 13-year anniversary of our brother's passing, we had decided to go ahead and talk about suicide on that one. So episode
5, we're going to pick up with the whole Clutches of Evil, and we're just going to continue with that. And what we'll do is we'll just go over just the tactics that the enemy used. And this episode will be probably a little bit more graphic, a little bit more detail of the things that we went through. But as usual, we'll talk about also the good things that God did to help us get through all that we went through. We're going to start out with talking about how things led up to the bigger things. There was just years and years of mind games. And I guess you would say, like we had talked about before with the grooming, that there were things that happened, I guess maybe to get us I don't want to say used to the things. It was like a gradual, small things, and then it led up. And you don't ever get used to it. So I don't want to say to get you used to it. Maybe not to mentally break down from the get-go.
Yeah.
Just to mentally prepare for the things that would eventually happen. So with you talked about there were people outside.
Yeah, when things started with you, it was in a different house than it started with me. And so when we moved to the house that everything started with me, the first thing that I heard that kind of led to the path with the sexual things was, or more of the attacks, I guess you'd say too, more of the dealings with this demonic force. I was in bed and I was laying there, and it was summertime. And I think I've mentioned this in one of the previous episodes, but anyway, I was laying in bed and it was summertime. So I had my window open, and I heard what sounded like 15, 20 people outside of my bedroom window just talking. It was almost like you could hear a little congregation of people, but you couldn't make out any certain conversation. It was just constant noise, people talking. And I went and got my dad, and he went outside and looked around. And I remember I was scared, so I didn't look too much, but I glanced out my window while he was outside looking around, and I didn't see anything or anybody. And he came back in, and that's when he had told me that whatever it was that had been at the other house had followed us to this house, and that it was now starting to cause more issues with me, to make me more aware of it, like it had been with Heather at the other house. To me, when at the first house, it was just like little more haunting, like ghostly things, like moving stuff like that. I did see the figure with the red eyes, me and my cousin did, but nothing else had happened as for really
evil things.
Yeah, evil things. Yes,
right.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yes.
As far as ghosts or per se, yeah. I don't really believe in ghosts, but it was a spirit. And with a lot of spirits, especially familiar spirits, they get you not scared at first to sort of weasel their way in. Mm-hmm. And then they start upping the ante, and you get to see the more evil side of things. So they'll come off as like Casper the Friendly Ghost. And then you'll wind up with, I don't even know what, but that's how it starts out. And that's sort of what you had was the little things that were not enough to make you scared, but enough to let you know there's something there.
Yeah. Like I was scared because I was young, and having, I guess you'd say, paranormal things happen, if you want to say that, but it was not the evil things that we're going to talk about today. The more seeing things that touched you, things like that. It wasn't anything like that. It was just enough to kind of, like you say, make you nervous, make you scared to be by yourself or whatever in the house, just seeing things and hearing things. And
it was like building up to the crescendo, or however they say that, because like it didn't start out with it bringing people to the house or using people physically like that. It started out as people outside the home. Like we would have to sit in front of the door showing stuff because there was somebody outside that was watching. And it would even go so far as like I would see like the fire on a cigarette light up every now and then, to where there was something or someone outside. I knew that. And it wasn't that I wanted to do any of this stuff.
Yes.
It was, I was forced to do that. And the way it would force us to do stuff was it would have you do something like that and make it seem so minimal and say, if you don't do that, then you can do this, which is like 10 times worse than that. So, I mean, it would sort of give you a choice, but the choice was like way worse than what it told you it wanted you to do at that time.
And like I had said in one of the, I think maybe last week, we were so conservative too. We're not saying anything that people who are more promiscuous or whatever, have things, are more susceptible to this stuff. But I'm just saying this kind of just gives you a background in our personalities, that we didn't dress provocatively. We weren't on our own.
Right. By choice.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yes, we were forced to, but I mean, individually we were not.
Right.
And it wasn't something that we would have done if we weren't made to do that.
It didn't feel like me when I was dressed like that. I almost feel like there were times that I was almost like two different people.
Yes.
And I had to sort of, I'm not saying I have split personalities because I don't think that, but I had to take myself mentally to a different place and be a different person, and in order to be able to deal with what all was going on. It was like, this isn't me, this is her.
I call it compartmentalizing. That's what I say. Like
right.
Like you say, in my brain, I had to say, okay, no, this is not me. And even now when I think about that stuff, it's even in my mind, it's a different person or a different time, like absolutely. It's us. We went through this, but we would not have done anything that we were forced to do on our own.
Right. Right.
So that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, is compartmentalizing. And if you think about it, God was probably even talking to us then.
That's what I was going to say. That's how we survived.
It was telling us, I mean, we had this demonic thing telling us what to do, but I feel like we had God there telling us, this is how you're going to survive this. So, I mean, I know it sort of sounds like I'm saying, oh, I was this person during this time and this person during that time. But I guess I sort of had to feel like I was this separate person when all this other stuff was going on, in order to be able to not have a mental breakdown.
And we've talked about that, how we would go to school. We made good grades. We got up and went to school every day.
We played sports.
Yes.
And we excelled in stuff.
And we were able to keep all of this other stuff away to where nobody knew anything about that.
Right.
All of those things.
Right.
And that's how we did it.
Right.
Was to just be like, okay, well, today I'm in this role.
Right.
Tonight, whenever I'm being tortured during the night, this is the role that I have to be in.
And maybe that's why I hate fake. Maybe that's why I just can't stand to be around something fake, because I feel like we had to be fake
forever
for so long. I want real in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's how things started, was like just having to show whoever outside. And I had no clue who was out there. And that was scary in itself. Are they going to just like come trying to barrel through the door? Are they going to try to kill me? Who is out there? I don't even know who's out there. But we didn't have a choice but to do that. And being so young, it was, I guess maybe it helped. I don't know. Maybe we were like more resilient mentally. I don't know.
Right.
But I mean, but we were also more impressionable because of our age. And you're raised with that mentality. If an adult tells you to do something, you do it. And that's how we were raised.
That's how we were raised.
From the get-go.
Yes. Yes.
If an adult tells you something, and if you walk in a room and adults are talking, you just stand there at the door until you're acknowledged. So.
And you don't question. You just do
it.
If you're told, you do it.
Right. So that battle in my head has been for years. It's like trying to distinguish, what was the demonic thing? What was actually a person?
Mm-hmm.
What part did they actually play in it? Were they totally controlled?
Yeah.
Or were they not? I mean, I don't know any time that I was totally controlled.
Right. Because
I wouldn't have remembered or felt the pain or the fear of what was going on if I was being controlled by something else. So that's something that even over all these years I have a hard time with is, did this person really do this to me, or were they just an innocent victim themselves that was being controlled by something that they had no control over? So that's what's been hard for me.
Me too, especially with the parent in all of this, because there's still part of you that cares about that parent, and even when things were going on at the end of their lives, for those 4 months, we were still there and helping take care of everything, but there's still that doubt in your mind, like, are you sure that there was something that was causing you to do this stuff? And I know that there were times that it wasn't.
Right.
And, and then I know that, I guess when I finally confronted him, then it was, I know that you have done this, and I know that there were other circumstances. There was absolutely something else there that caused a lot of things to happen. However, I don't believe that 100% of the time,
no,
that is what caused things to happen.
Well, that sort of leads into one of the things that we were talking about, or the other day that we were going to mention today. The things that sort of led up was like our whole family. We were like a family that like wrestled around and traded punches, and it was just a normal thing. We were tough. I mean, Dad made us tough, and then we had an older brother who made us tough too. I mean, you just had to learn how to take up for yourself. So as we got a little older, it got to where during the wrestling, there was some inappropriate touching.
Yes.
And then when we would get upset or mad over it, it was, well, we got to do this right now. That way that thing won't bother you so much later. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason this stuff is happening. So I started like feeling so much anger whenever that would happen. And I would be like, I don't know, you feel trapped. Mm-hmm. And you can't show emotion. You couldn't show emotion because it fed off of that, supposedly. Anytime you were upset, anytime you cried, anytime you showed any emotion, it fed off of it. Mm-hmm. It got stronger because it knew it was tearing you down. So it's like I kept so much anger inside, and it's so hard to put into words what you feel. I mean, your stomach just goes into knots, and it's like you want to attack something. It's like you're in a corner and you want to come out fighting whatever it is, but you can't. It's like you're chained in that corner. Mm-hmm. And you're just pulling at those chains and fighting at those chains, but you can't get loose to take up for yourself. And that's sort of what I felt like in my mind and in my emotions. It's like, I'm just chained. I'm just chained to this wall and I cannot get loose and I'm never going to get loose. And I'm being forced to do things that I don't want to do and I can't stand it. Mm-hmm. And that was the control it had.
Yes.
So it was like, I don't know that I ever got to a point where when it said to do something, I said, okay.
I know I didn't.
No, because it was always like, why?
Yeah.
Why? We just did this last week. We just did this last night. We just did this. When's enough? And when are you going to be done torturing me?
Even when we did what we were told to do, exactly what we were told to do, it was supposed to make things better, and it did not. It was just done for that night, and then 2 or 3 days later, back where it was again.
Right. There was no done. There was hardly any downtime. It was like we were constantly in fight mode. There was no flight. We couldn't get away.
No.
We tried. There was no getting away.
And going back to like the wrestling stuff that you were talking about, our dad was also the more affectionate of our parents. And that's not a throwback to mom or anything like that. It just is a fact, you know. I'm more affectionate than you are, just how different people are. And it was always, come give me a hug or, you know, whatever like that. And then when things started, it was come give me a hug. And then there was touching involved. And it got to the point where you didn't want to have anything to do with them. You didn't want to play. You didn't want to goof off. You didn't want to hug. You didn't want anything like that because of the way that it made you feel, or you didn't know if it was going to be something like just an innocent hug or if it was going to be some, you know, touch or something like that. And it always just made you feel terrible.
Right.
You know, and so I had a very hard time with that all along because, yeah, a big part of me, it was my dad. I loved him. And even now, you know, I still have a hard time with that. But then, like you said, I would get angry too and just be like, just don't touch me. Don't have anything to do with me.
And then there was the guilt. Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't do this if I didn't have to, mm-hmm. if it wasn't forcing me. So I feel bad enough having to do this without you getting mad at me too. Mm-hmm. So it was that too. It was just so much mind games. It was. So much play on everything, on your emotions. Then you felt guilty for getting mad, but at the same time, you didn't want someone touching you like that. Yeah. And maybe that's why I have trouble with people with hugs. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's why I have trouble with people touching me with affection, mm-hmm. because I tense up automatically. I'm like, I'm not good with that. I feel uncomfortable when people are in my personal space. Mm-hmm. But I am getting better. I think that through time, I'm healing.
But you're almost like you don't know what's going to happen.
Right. And it's that, like the post-traumatic. I mean, it's just a reaction. It's not nothing that you plan. It's just when they start getting close, you start putting the walls up. Like, I don't know what your intentions are, but if you're a few feet away from me, I'm safe. But when you start getting within arm's reach, I don't know what you plan.
Yes.
And I am getting better. I do trust people more. I do hug more. I do let people get a little bit closer to me because I don't want to be bound mm-hmm. by that anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be bound by fear. I don't want to be bound by dislike of people. I don't want that anymore. I want to be able to have close relationships. I want people to feel safe around me. I want people to feel comfortable, because that discomfort that I have does go off onto other people. Mm-hmm. Then they don't feel so comfortable. She's really offish. Well, it's nothing personal with them, yes. But that puts that wedge there that don't need to be there because they haven't done anything to me. I'm not trying to do anything to them, but my reactions are doing something with that relationship. So I'm trying to be more cognizant
subconsciously,
of that.
You know, it's not like you are trying, like you say, to just be off-putting, but you know, at the same time, we had to protect ourselves for so many years. However, we had to do it
And
individually.
You can't just turn that off.
No.
It takes time. I mean, 20 some years I've been working on this.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to be more soft.
Right.
I've always had this wall up and just being sort of hard. I'm just trying to just mellow out and just be more open to people.
And then I'm really outgoing and talking to people. I talk to a lot of people. I don't care who it is. I try to be, which you do too. I'm not saying we all try to be very good to people in general. However, and I have a lot of friends and very good friends, but I have very few extremely close friends because it's still trust, It
is.
And you know that they're not going to hurt you, but at the same time, one of the people who is supposed to protect you and take care of you and everything has hurt you from a very young age.
Right.
And so you're like, after all these years, I have a best friend I've been friends with since like 9th grade. And we go on trips together and everything. And I love her. But even she had no idea about what had gone on until 3 years ago when we went on a trip. And I don't let a lot of people in enough to get close enough for that. Because, like you say, that's a hug to me is a hug. You know what I mean? Like, I love you, or I can just give you a hug and comfort you. But if I let you in enough to be able for you to realize that maybe what all I'd gone through, that's a little harder for me.
Right.
Because, well, I had not wanted to talk about things for years.
Right.
And so if anything like that would come up and I felt like I was going to have to just either stop the conversation and divert it somewhere else, then maybe I was not being a good friend, but at the same time, I was nowhere ready to even start tackling that subject at all with anybody. It didn't matter who it was.
Right.
So, and, one of our points today was the very first thing was years of mind games.
Yes.
And these are the things that we still deal with, even after mine has been 31 years, and it was when it first started. And so even now it's like, we've both been seen therapists, but there's still things that are there that will never totally be past.
I feel like, though, the closer I get to God,
mm-hmm.
the more peace with these situations I have. I mean, it's a process, but I'm healing. I'm able to love people, and it's a genuine love, not a fake, oh, I love you, and not meaning a word that you're saying. I'm able to actually truly love people.
Yes.
And for me, that's a big deal. I mean, I have a lot of acquaintances. I won't even say I have a lot of friends because I really don't. My circle is very, very small. And sometimes that just comes with life experiences in general, not so much this. You just learn that just because you have a bunch of people around you doesn't mean they're all for you. So you keep the ones that you trust the most, the closest to you. They're the ones that can sit at my dinner table and eat with me. The others, y'all can just eat at your own table. Mm-hmm. Just stay at your house and eat at your own table.
Yes.
But like we were saying, things just just gradually. It went from like having people outside and us having to do stuff like that to being told what we had to wear. And we would have to wear dresses. We'd have to go for rides. And I don't know about you. I wasn't there when you were there because we didn't know that each other were going through the same thing. But I would act like I was asleep because we would have to hike our dresses up, show stuff to the truckers that were up high and could see into the vehicle. So I would just act like I was asleep. I wasn't, but that was my way of being able to go to that other realm too. If my eyes are closed, I'm not seeing what's going on. I don't even know that this is going on right now because I just couldn't stand it. Mm-hmm. To me, I felt disgusting.
And that's what I mean. Like, we were not those type of people that did things like that
normally. I don't know any normal person that does anything like that anyway. Or that just is so far out there to me. I mean, really. Mm-hmm. And you didn't know if they were going to follow you. You didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, it was scary. And here they are in these big old trucks. I mean, it was just very, very scary. So a lot of times that was my way of dealing with things, is just close my eyes. I'm not here. This isn't happening.
And when you're talking about that, this just made me think too, because we've had people since we've done the podcast, but a few people that we had talked to before this have asked why our mom didn't do anything. Why did she not, or did she not know, or how did she not know? Mom was going through her own things. She was living her own hell.
Right.
And the way that this thing worked and the way that it would make us think was, Heather had tried to get help from a neighbor, and basically that was shut down. I had tried to get help from a neighbor, that was shut down. And so by that time we were just like, okay, well, this is just what we're meant to deal with. This is just going to be the way that it is. And Mom had her own hell that she was going through, to the point that once we are learning things, we don't know how she survived, just because, and she's just now started talking to us about things too. And you got to think about too, the fear of talking to anybody. Yes. And it had all of us sort of not at each other, not like fighting or arguing, but it would say stuff to me, or put stuff in, there would be stuff going through my mind as to why you were acting the way you were acting when you weren't going through anything, because I was being told that I was protecting you by doing this. So there was that isolation factor. So I wasn't comfortable talking to Mom, because then I would be bringing her into something to where she was going to get hurt. And we're her kids, so she's not going to tell us what she's going through and have us scared to death. You just don't. You don't do that with your kids. You don't put that fear. It's supposed to be your job to fight
protect
your own battle, and without pulling your kids into it. Yeah,
but it's your job to sort of protect your kids, and she was. Mm-hmm. She was protecting us by not letting us know what ugly she was seeing or dealing with. So that's how it isolated us. Yes. It was like, it made each of us think that we were the only ones going through this.
And as we were getting this episode together and we were talking the other night, as we're getting everything together for these episodes, we're opening up a little bit more about the things that we've gone through also to each other, because we've talked and discussed things, but we've actually are going more in depth with this stuff too. And we realized that we each went through a lot of the same things, but we had to do very different things too, because it was like it knew all of us mentally and what was going to affect us each individually more.
It pushed you to the point of breaking, but not to the point of wanting to break. Let me put it that way, but not to the point that you're going to go over the edge.
Yes.
It was like just keeping you right there, but you weren't no good if your brain wasn't there. Mm-hmm. If you just literally had a nervous breakdown and weren't even in this world, you were no good to it. Mm-mm. So it took you to that point, but then it would just back off a little bit, make you think you're good, and then run back at you again.
So you were talking about the people being out on the porch.
Yeah.
And that only happened to me once or twice. that I remember. I remember it when it first started happening, when things first started happening with me. And supposedly I knew the people that were on the porch. You didn't know, supposedly, the people that were on the porch. And so
it could be this person or it could be that person. It wasn't a definite, oh, that is that person. It could be.
Yes.
Which, I mean, it didn't make it any better.
No.
Nothing could make it any better.
No. And still, like, I don't want this to come off as judgmental. I'm like 13, 14 when big things started happening with me. And a lot of my friends were, already starting to have sex and with their boyfriends and, doing things like that. And they talk about it. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't want any part of that right now,
Right.
because I just don't even understand how you can be thinking about that at this age. But, I was also in a totally different mindset than they were because of the horrific things we were going through in our house.
And I think in my mind, that was just, to me, I saw that as just being dirty.
Yeah.
Because that's how being forced made me feel, was dirty. And I couldn't comprehend as a teenager why people chose to do this.
And that's what I'm saying about whenever I say it several times, reiterate the fact that we were not like this. And nothing that we say on here is trying to be judgmental towards anybody. But, there are some women who are okay with having low-cut shirts on and showing all of that stuff if they have cleavage or whatever. Or driving down the road and flashing what you have, whatever. We were never like that. We, on our own.
Right.
Like we said, we had to do that stuff. But we wouldn't have done that. If you and I were in a car together, goofing off, we would have never done anything like that.
That wouldn't have even.
And that's what I'm trying to say is it made us do things that made us so uncomfortable that it was sickening to us.
Right.
But it was almost like it enjoyed every minute of it because it knew that this was something that we hated. Like you had to write letters or expose yourself to people who had come over to the house.
That's what it was progressing.
Yes.
It progressed from people being outside and me having to show stuff to people being at the house. And I mean, it planned everything down to a T. It was like, well, I'm going to buy this alcohol. You're going to drink it. You're going to act like you're drunk, whether you're drunk or not. And you're going to start showing stuff to this certain person. So it's like I didn't have a choice. Just act like it's hot in the room. And I had a nightgown on that buttoned up. And just unbutton the gown. No big deal. It was a big deal. Yeah. It was a big deal to me. But it fed off of it.
Because during the day, if we wore something like that, short shorts or whatever, it was, you're not wearing that. You cannot wear that. You are not allowed to leave this house with stuff like that on.
Right.
Or that's showing entirely too much. Get back in there and change clothes. Yet, the same person, a couple hours later, is like, this is what you need to do. You need to wear this dress that's way short or pull it up or, unbutton your gown and show whatever, And so that's what I mean. Like, it was we lived two totally different lives. I mean, it really was. It was crazy. And that's kind of how, I hate to say this, but that's how there's a lot of people that may not believe anything that we say because our lives outside of our house
was nothing like what was inside.
No. And that saying, you do not know what happens behind closed doors, we lived that.
That's why when someone says, can you believe such and such did this? Mm-hmm. I say, I don't know. But I also know that sometimes people aren't the same out of the view of everyone else.
In my head, I say this as our dad was, I guess I always say, like a pillar of the community. Everybody knew him, everybody loved him. He coached softball, worked. Everyone at work loved him, and he was a good person to everybody else. But they didn't live with him.
Right. And I still, even at 49 years old, I still have a hard time trying to, and I'm not going to figure it out. It's just never going to happen. But trying to disassociate the demonic
yes
from the real dad.
Yes.
And he even before all this happened, Dad was there. But on the weekends, he would go out drinking. He would come in. He was a totally different person when he came in. He was very mean when he was drinking. He wasn't physically abusive.
No.
At that when we were little. He was never he never beat us.
No.
It was more of the sexual abuse and mental abuse than what it was any kind of physical abuse like that.
But we were very controlled even before this stuff started.
Right.
What he said went. And
right.
Very demanding in the way his parenting was.
Yes.
In general.
And sort of like a beat down thing. It was like if we did something wrong, it wasn't, I'm going to tell you about it. You're going to be in trouble for it right now. And we're going to move on. It was, I'm hearing about this for the next three months.
Yes.
No, it's months down the road.
Months.
You're still hearing about it.
It was constant for 3 days.
Yes. Yes. And then after that, it was thrown up in your face all the time.
Yes.
So it's like you didn't want to make a mistake because you were going to hear about it forever. And there was no getting past it.
No. And the rules changed all the time.
You didn't know what the rule was.
Because you were doing, and like I've said before, like my freshman year in high school, we weren't allowed to have boyfriends until or date till we turned 16, but then it was like, well, you're getting older. So yeah, if you find a guy that you like, as long as you talk to him and, on the phone and he comes over to the house and I get to meet him, then that's fine. So I had done exactly what I was supposed to do. I was at a basketball game and came out to let him meet this guy. When I got home, 13, 14 years old, I got a whipping because I had done something wrong, even though I had actually done everything that I was told to do. I had done it correctly, but in his mind, I had done something wrong. And, so it was like
the rules changed
all the time. They did.
The mood.
Yes.
There was no consistency with anything. Nothing was consistent in our life. I don't even know how we have it even halfway together now. No. I won't say we have it together, but I'm surprised our life isn't total chaos and into adulthood. I'm surprised that we have college educations, more than one degree, each of us, and that we have provided jobs, we've provided some kind of normalcy for our children. We're a stable source for them. I have gone through my times where I wasn't so stable.
Right. Oh, me too.
I have totally lost who I was even in adulthood. And I think it was just me trying to cope with all that we had gone through before. I just couldn't deal with circumstances that were happening at that point. I just couldn't. But I know for a fact that God was even with me through all that. I may have sort of, in my mind, turned my back towards God, but he was still there. He was still talking to me. So I know that he's been with us every step of the way. And if other people want to judge, that's fine. Because I know that God understands.
Yes.
God knows what we've been through. God has seen all that we've gone through. And God understands. And I'm not saying that making mistakes and doing things that definitely isn't right is okay. I'm just saying that you can still ask for forgiveness for those things. And God can help you not make that decision again.
And as we're talking about that, we'll bring up Dad. He a couple years before he passed away, he did rededicate his life, was going to church, and really, I feel like was trying to do things differently. He didn't try to go back and, I don't know how you say it, like make good on, not make good, but just try to fix everything that was done wrong, but, and there were times, that I had to, one time when I confronted him about things that were going on, he didn't want to own up and say that there was something that it was possibly him and not just the demonic thing. Right. And that was when I finally had got to the point where I was like, no. If you are not going to acknowledge that you did something wrong, and it wasn't just an outside force, then we're done here with this conversation. Right. And I'm leaving. And that's exactly what I said. I will leave this kitchen and I will never come back to see you if you do not say and take responsibility for what you did. Yes, there was something else that caused numerous things. Yes. And a lot of the issues did come because of, a demonic force and things like that. But at the same time, it was not always that. And so, and he did at that point said, yes, it was me and I am sorry. And I was able to forgive him at that point. There's still times now when
it creeps struggle, up.
Yes. Right. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, that some days I don't hate him, and that's a strong word, but it's the truth, because there's so much hurt and then anger about everything in my heart some days. And then there's other days when I was like, he tried to be a good person. Maybe he did try to do what he thought was right and try to help us out. I don't know. I wasn't in his mind. And I just have to pray about the days that I have the harsh words or the harsh thoughts about him and couldn't care less whether I thought about him in a positive way or not. I have to pray about that.
I think that's right there has caused me problems with my relationship with God, mm-hmm. because he's God the Father, but my look on a father wasn't that great.
Yeah.
So to put my full trust in anything was hard. And to see a father as a protector, I didn't have that. So that is what I've really been working on with my relationship with God, is trying to disassociate the ugly with the word father.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for me, and I don't want to speak for you, but when I have a good friend who had a dad who took care of 3 sisters. And because the mom was gone for a little while and then came back, and it's like, how does that happen without there being some other ulterior motive with that dad and the daughters? Do you
right.
see what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I don't just see a father-daughter relationship. Sometimes, I do know it happens, and I'm not saying that, that there's something going on in everybody. It just, in my mind, because it did not happen with us, we didn't have daddy's little girl.
Right.
That it's hard for me to think that their dad just loved them and doted on them and everything.
Right.
Because he wanted to and because he loved them.
Right.
Not because there was...
Not in an ugly way.
Yes, exactly. And that's something else that I have to think about too. And I'm like, you can't, in my mind, I'm like, you can't do that.
You can't categorize everybody in one category.
Innocent relationships
than there are not.
What we went through,
right.
Ours is not the norm.
Right.
And there are so many times that I wish that we had the norm.
Right.
Right. So, but at the same time, that was not our purpose.
And I know they talk a lot about, well, she turned out that way because her dad wasn't in her life. I really honestly don't know what would be worse, not having a dad in your life or having a dad that was evil in your life. Because, I mean, you don't really know what you're missing out if he was never there.
Mm-hmm.
But you have just a sour taste in your mouth when you had what we had.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to say, like, I was talking to my youngest son last night, and he said, the grandfather that y'all are talking about, or the dad that you're talking about, isn't the grandfather that we had.
Right.
He did change.
Mm-hmm.
That our kids did not go through that stuff. And we were very protective.
Yes.
Especially of the nieces.
Yes.
It was like, no, you will never be alone with any of them.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I might not say why, but you're not going to be alone with any of them.
Mm-mm.
It's not going to happen. I'm going to do all I can to protect them. I don't know if it was really you. I don't know if it wasn't really you, but it don't matter. No one else is going to feel the pain that I felt,
mm-hmm.
especially coming from you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
We had enough craziness within the whole family of that kind of stuff, but not in this part.
Mm-mm.
Was it
not
going
in
any further?
way that we can control it?
Exactly.
Is it going to happen again?
Right.
You know, because this stops. That's what we said. We were doing the episode with generational curses.
It stops.
Yes. We can see how it has gotten to us, but it is not going to go any further. And not just from you and I, but the outsiders, our cousins and stuff too, like we have said. And it is our plan to have some of our family on here too that have gone through things, not with our dad, but with other family members or even outside people like we had to do things with, and let them talk about their experiences, things they've gone through, and how they feel that, like we do, that it's not going to go anywhere. It is there. It's kind of like our job with this generation to stop anything else that has gone on. And that is our plan. I hate to keep bringing up, but at the same time, that's what this, like we said, this episode was a little more graphic, but we had people that would come to our house who were just to come to our house for us to be forced to have sex with outside people. And so, and then there were friends of our dad who we later found out did things like this with their family, with their daughters. And like we had said before, it was like, yeah, come on, you're good.
We were a magnet.
Yes, best friends.
We were a magnet to this type of people.
And even now, like with one of them that we just found out in the past, like, year or so about things, we had a pretty high, we thought highly of them. Yeah. And we knew that there were some things that had gone on, but as soon as we found out exactly some of the extent of everything, it was like, no, we're done. I had deleted off of Facebook. I will not. It was somebody I used to walk up and hug when I would see them. Not anymore. No. When I found out the depravity of what they had done to people, even their own family members, it was like, no, I'm not going to continue to hang out with somebody like that. However, it was like that with our dad in the situation. It was, well, I guarantee that he probably knew some of the stuff that went on. I can't say for sure. He's not here to say whether he knew or not. I don't know. But at the same time, a lot of times you kind of know that stuff, know? And so I feel like instead of being keeping a protector and keeping anything like that away or anyone like that away from us, it was, no, let's go hang out. Let's go to the bar. Let's go drink. Let's do this. Let's be together all day long, every day. And you come around my kids all you want. It's okay. All my girls, it's fine. Whatever. But we've kind of talked about that. How do you do that? The first time that I had an ill feeling about somebody around even your kids before I had mine. I'd been like, no, do not let them around your kid.
Right.
Do not, you know? And if you're not going to stop it, I will make sure that they don't come around your kid.
And that's one thing we can say about Mom.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We may have gone through a lot for years, but when she came in just one night and saw what in her mind she thought wasn't right, she told that one person, you get out of my house. Don't you ever come back in my house. Mm-hmm. And that's when Dad was like, what are you talking about? Are you crazy? And that's the stuff she went through all the time.
She did.
Anytime she thought maybe there was something going on, are you crazy? Why are you making this stuff up? Why are you being mean to this person? Why are you doing this? And why are you doing that? To make her think that she was the bad person. We were always the bad people. Mm-hmm. That's what I feel like. We were always the bad people.
Yeah.
If we didn't like what was going on, we were the bad people. Mm-hmm. We were making him feel bad. We were making him feel guilty. Because, he didn't want to do this. He was being forced to do it. And
you didn't make him look bad either.
No, that was definitely not out. Mm-hmm. No, you didn't make him look bad outside the home, for sure.
Even after we were grown.
Right.
And we were never on the same level as an adult.
Right.
It was, I am still your dad, and you do not talk to me like that. And even though we wouldn't be disrespectful, we weren't raised like that. But at the same time, there were times when it was finally like, you know what? You don't have that power over me anymore.
Right.
You can't just
talk to me any way you want to.
And treat me however.
I'm married. I have kids of my own.
Yes, exactly.
And you can't ground me. You can't kick me. You can't ground me to my room. You can't whip me. You can't do any of that because I'm my own person. Yes. I pay my own bills. I live in my own house. I have my own life. And if you want respect, then you need to give some too.
Yes. And not the totalitarian way either, like this is how it's going to be. No, sorry. No, that doesn't work anymore. We're no longer under your roof, and that's not how it works anymore.
And that's that's hard for me.
And that's what I was going to say earlier too, was we have a hard time with that. And I know that I'm very guilty of this. And I have to step back sometimes and think, because in my marriage, I have a hard time with my husband telling me, or even saying, we're not doing that.
Right.
We're not doing that.
What people are meaning as suggestions, we sort of take it as control.
Yes.
And we've had to learn that we're not always in control.
Right.
But we'll probably carry on more with this next time. There's more stuff that we can add, but there's a lot to go into with the other stuff that we've had going on. But I just want to say that, and every week I say, we're not doing this to glorify the enemy,
no.
To say that he has more power, because he doesn't. And I remember one instance, I don't even know what was going on that night, but it was bad. And I don't know if I had gotten to that point where I just wanted to be done. I don't know. I mean, there's so much stuff that's happened over the years, so much just degrading stuff. And I don't know if I was at the point of just feeling like I just was going to snap, or I have no idea. I just don't know. But I remember laying in the bed, and it was my dad, but it wasn't my dad, but it wasn't the evil presence either, that instance. But it said, the voice was very calm and comforting, and was like, come here, my little one. And those are the exact words. And I was sort of hesitant because, I mean, it was so able to change things all the time. I didn't know if I was stepping into a trap. But being obedient, I got out of bed, walked over there, and I got the most comforting hug I've ever had. And I just felt like, the whole world just came off of my shoulders. It was just so peaceful. And it was just for a couple of seconds. But what was said was, I want you to lay down and I want to show you something. I want to show you your spirit. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to die tonight. Because I was like, how else can you show someone your spirit?
Absolutely.
So I'm laying there and I'm just waiting. I'm like, okay, my spirit is going to be sucked out of my body. This is going to be the end. And the voice was like, I want you to look over here. So I looked, and it was like a ball of light in between two hands, and it was floating. And they said, I want you to look at this. The more you win, the more you fight, the more you win, the brighter that light and your spirit becomes. So after that happened, I mean, I probably laid in the bed and cried, but this time it wasn't tears of fear.
Yes.
It was just an overwhelming feeling of, I'm not alone. I've got someone fighting with me. And I don't know if it was an angel. I don't know what it was, but I know it was something comforting. So even with all the evil that's happened, God was still there.
Yes.
Just like when it was choking me and said, where's your God now? And I was able to breathe out right here. God still let us know that he was there and he was still with us along the way. And when we got to the point that I thought I'm done, and I don't know. I don't know if I was at the point that night that I just wanted to end everything. I don't know where I was that night. I don't know if it was one of the nights that I was actually being sexually abused, whipped, everything. I don't know.
You don't remember the circumstances.
I don't
that led
remember.
up to it.
I just know that it was a horrible night. It was horrible. It was just a devastating, degrading, horrible night. And God knew at that time what I needed. I needed that reassurance. I needed to know I wasn't alone. I needed to know that someone still cared about me and still loved me in the midst of that battle. And that renewed my strength to keep fighting. I mean, I knew that I had some person that was given up. Yeah. And then I had this angel or whatever coming in and saying, don't give up. I want to show you. I want you to see that what you're doing isn't in vain. That little spirit in there, that light, it just keeps getting brighter every time you win. This is a battle. This is a battle of good and evil. And the more you're winning, the brighter you get. And maybe that's why we're doing this. We're trying to share that light. Yes. That brightness in that darkness, in that time. That was probably one of the darkest nights of my life. God brought the light. Yeah. He brought the light that night.
And showed you
that he was stronger.
Yes.
He had power.
And he was in control, and he knew that you were going to be okay. It was a fight. Good versus evil, and God always will win in that battle.
But the demonic force wants you to think that it's got all the power.
Yeah, it does.
Where's your God now? Who's going to save you now? I've beat you down this bad. You're never going to get up. And then God comes in and says, let me show you. Let me show you what I can do. Let me show you that I'm still here and I'm still fighting with you. And that's to let the enemy know where he stands too. Yes. So I really feel like, just sharing with people that, we might be in a battle, but you can survive it. You can survive that darkness.
And we're not going to say that you're not going to come out unscathed, that you're not going to have any mental battles afterwards, because that stuff is still there. We still struggle sometimes on the daily with everything. We have, like we said before, nightmares. There's triggers that we have, certain smells that we have that still trigger us. And yeah, it's never going to be perfect, and that is not just going to be totally wiped away. But we have to remember, and that there's a song that, and this is seriously one that I relate to, and it says, "Heal the wound, but leave the scar," because I want to be healed from what I have gone through, but I don't want to forget what I've gone through, because some days I do, some days I wish I could, but in order to know that God has, like you just said, God has always been in control of every situation and in our lives. And we were always in church, always. Not saying we never strayed, even as adults and things like that. And our lives did not get crazy.
Right.
Did things we shouldn't have done. But we've always come back to God and known that He is our safe place, and He is our protector, and He does love us as a father should, and does protect us and keep us safe and is there regardless. So
right. Yeah, that's the thing. You can't help someone if you've never gone through something.
Yes.
And the battles that we go through is where we gain our strength. And as we say every week, we just want people to know that they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
That there's battles out there that people would not understand. And I'm sure some of the stuff we've said today, people will be like, "There's no way."
Yeah.
But that's fine. That's fine. This is our story.
Yes. And they have a right to
This is our truth.
Our truth, exactly. Yes. Yes.
Not so much our story. This is our truth.
Yes.
And what people choose to believe and not believe, that's on them.
And I can't say that if I heard it and had not gone through any of this, that I might not be a little bit skeptical.
Yes.
And say, I don't know about all that. I just don't, that person, I don't think I could see them being like that. And that's fine.
Right.
You're
right.
You're allowed to have that opinion.
Right.
That's
right.
okay.
Right.
And,
But I still feel like there's people out there that benefit from hearing and knowing that there's other people out there in their own battles, and that you can overcome.
Yes.
You can win. And like you said, you might not come out unscathed. There's going to be scars. There's battle scars that everybody carries. But the survival is the part that you talk about.
You can either live in it or you can figure out a way to move on. And I personally, I want to move on in a positive way with God on my side, helping me to figure out the best way for me to be able to move on mentally and leaning on Him at the same time.
Right.
That's how I want to move on.
And to keep that compassion for others.
Yes. And like we've said, we're not here trying to down anybody, trash anybody. No, our dad is not here to say anything about anything. And we're not putting this out there for anyone to.
I don't want to glorify the enemy. I don't want anybody to think that he's got so much power. In that point of our lives, he did.
Yes.
Because we didn't know how to fight. We didn't have any kind of sources. We had God, but we didn't know the weapons of warfare.
No.
We didn't know that the enemy was under our feet, that we didn't know all that stuff. We had no clue how to battle this. And anyone that we talked to, they didn't. When we were able to talk to someone or reach out, we still didn't get nowhere because they didn't know either.
No.
So we just want to talk about how you can wind up in these positions, you can wind up in these battles, but you can still overcome.
Yes.
And there are things that are horrible that people have gone through. Absolutely horrendous that people have gone through. And we're sharing that to let you know what all we've gone through, where we were mentally, what all we have seen. But not for the enemy to be praised, but for God to be glorified that we overcame it, that we survived it.
Yes.
That's our main goal. We want people to know you can survive it. Don't give up.
Yes.
Just don't give up.
And if you need someone to just talk to, not without being any judgment, you just want to talk. I mean, you don't even have to, you can email us, just type it out. Because sometimes speaking to somebody is hard, but it's easier to put it in words on, like in a note or something like that. Sometimes to just be able to get it out to somebody in some certain way is another reason that we're doing this. If there is somebody out there who needs help, who's going through this.
Or even so much as say, hey, I'm battling something right now that I don't know that I can overcome. Will you just pray for me?
Yes.
And I would be happy to do that. God knows what you're going through. And all I have to do is lift up your name or your circumstance. God's there.
Yeah.
He's already there.
Mm-hmm.
He's already worked it out. But we will pray for you. We'll do whatever needs done to help you get through that battle, or to be able to deal with the scars and the wounds from that battle.
And even if there's people who listen to this that aren't having issues, but they know somebody that is, and all you have to do, if you want to send us an email, just it's survivingdarknesspodcast@gmail.com, and say, I have a friend. Can you just lift them up in prayer? You don't even have to give a name, and we can still do that. Just as a Christian, as a fellow Christian person. And that's what we want to say too, is for anybody, not just if you're going through this or whatever. We just want to be here for people
to encourage.
Yes. And that's
to
what
encourage.
This is about.
We didn't really have that encouragement from people.
And like you said, we'll say this and then we'll wrap it up. We didn't know how to fight things at that time. I didn't.
We were kids.
To say, get thee behind me, Satan, or I rebuke you. I didn't know anything like that at that time. I had no idea. And now, in our nightmares, dreams, however you want to say it, we're fighting back.
And try and just, yes. And we know, just get the name Jesus out.
Yes.
Just get Jesus out and it's done.
And even that right there, this just, man. That just hit me. That even in our dreams and our nightmares, period, God is showing us that we have the power with Him. If we are saying and just calling on His name, He's given us that power. So that's episode 5, you all. And thank you all for listening, and always for your encouraging words and for just your support. We appreciate it so much. And we will hopefully have you guys tune in next week for episode 6.